We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes on this edition of Illinois Rising. Taking your calls, 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro answer line. We're talking about the governor's race, the GOP side of the Tuesday election. And taking your calls. Interesting tweet this morning I got too regarding the National Review endorsement and the National Review piece that was the cover story back in December on Rauner, worst Republican governor in America. A Twitter handle Chicago Hound tweeted, question for Bruce Rauner. In 2014, if you knew you'd appear on the cover of National Review as the worst Republican governor in America, would that tell you you'd go on to do some very bad things? Or would that tell you you'd prove successful in achieving your hidden agenda? It's a good way to phrase the question. Which would it be? 2014 Bruce Rauner, if he had seen that cover story coming, what would that tell him about his tenure? Let's go to Mike on the north side. You're on Illinois Rising.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I think Tuesday is going to be the biggest upset since the Tin Can Sailors of Taffy 3 drove back the Japanese center force in 1944.
Wow.
This is going to be, I have two groups of people who are enthusiastically supporting Jeanne Ives that usually take Democratic ballots. Chicago blue-collar city workers and actually Chicago Archdiocese priests. They were more than happy this weekend to take the Jeanne Ives buttons. Both groups usually take Democratic ballots, but they're fed up with the corruption. They're fed up with the status quo with Rauner, and they're fed up with their own unions. So this is going to be a big upset.
All right, thanks for the call, Mike. Candace in DuPage.
Hi, Dan. I just want to say yesterday I volunteered for Jeanne, and I made a lot of phone calls, and it was encouraging. And in my neighborhood, I haven't seen a single Rauner sign. All I've seen are the Republicans or Jeanne Ives sign. And one last thing I want to mention is I went to a senior center yesterday in a high-end neighborhood. A lot of the seniors, they didn't know that they were supposed to vote on Tuesday. But once I explained it to them and explained to all the people who are new from out of state how to register, they were enthusiastic. So make sure that, if you have a grandmother in the state, that you remind them that they have to vote on Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for the
and
call.
who to vote for.
Thanks for the call, Candace. It's true. I mean, it's one of those things people have to remember. 800,000 Republican primary voters, maybe fewer this election, but certainly in that ballpark. Across a state as big as Illinois, that's a lot of people to get to. That's a lot of that takes a lot of penetration, time, and money. And obviously, Ives has been at a decided disadvantage. She didn't have the $20 million to spend that Rauner has spent so far, which, I mean, sounds like a pittance compared to J.B. Pritzker, but $20 million is still real money. Yeah, it used to be, Jeanne's raised and spent, somewhere in the area of $4+ million. That used to be a huge amount of money for a primary. A huge amount of money. Yeah. So obviously, the existence of Pritzker and the existence of Rauner have changed sort of the paradigm on what you need to spend. But the advantage, of course, that Jeanne has is just what these callers just said, sort of the grassroots. People are tired of the status quo. They feel betrayed by Rauner. They voted for him the first time. They followed his career and what he's done to the state since that time. They're more informed than he gives them credit for. And I think that penetration, you don't need $20 million for that. Well, that's the other thing, too, is, with $20 million, you can get some people to believe, because that don't pay attention. Some people believe if he had spent $20 million saying Jeanne Ives is a member of ISIS, some people would believe that because they're just not paying attention. She's a member of ISIS? Really? Oh, that's not good. We can't have a member of ISIS as the governor. But there is this danger when you tell a lie that is refuted by not just conservative leaders, the legislators that are supporting her, but also by the media across the political spectrum as, the worst lie, the most pathetic, sickening fraud that's ever been perpetrated in a statewide election. That has the potential to boomerang on you when people avail themselves of the truth and are like, well, this guy did all these things that I don't like, opposite of what he said he was going to do. Opposite of what I thought I was supporting, and now he's lying about the other person to try and cover his tracks. I'm kind of like, doubly offended. There have been a lot of people, Dan, who've lost their business career by spending a lot of money, tons and tons of money, trying to sell people a product that they don't want. And it's a lot easier to sell people a product they want. It just doesn't cost as much. Steve and Wayne, you're on Illinois Rising.
I'm born and raised in Illinois, started a business 35 years ago. I want to pass it on to my kids. And I'm thinking to myself, do I really want to do this to them? Because if I pass it on to them, they're stuck in this state. And I really believe firmly that Jeanne is our only salvation on both sides, the Democrats, Rauner, anyone that's running for governor. She's the only one that really understands the problem and has the policy solutions to solve it. We need her to win on Tuesday.
Thanks for the call, Steve. Well, the other thing, and just going back to what you were saying before, Pat, about some of the establishment Republicans that have folded in with Rauner, Durkin, and Bill Brady, the legislative leaders, because they're a couple of welfare queens who are reliant on his financing. People get the fact that, I think they're increasingly getting the fact that, so Ives, during her half a dozen years in the General Assembly, she's been willing to take on Republican legislative leaders. She's been willing to essentially rankle establishment Republicans who open with surrender to the other side. And so, I like that. And that, frankly, that has greater appeal in a general election, too, that she's not so partisan. She's about policy and principle. And if Republicans want to fold and say vote for a 32% tax increase, then she's happy to call them out just as she would call out Madigan Democrats. Yeah, she's a once-in-a-generation type leader, type candidate who doesn't really care about like her image in the context of the typical image. What she cares about is what she believes in. What she cares about is making people's lives better, and she's willing to go fight for those principles. It's a rare quality. It's a quality Rauner said he had, but he did not have. Mary Ellen, you're on Illinois Rising.
Oh, hi, Dan and Pat. I just wanted to tell you all, I received from Diana's crowd, the NARAL, twice, these big brochures, pro-abortion, and I've never received that in any election prior, which tells me they're worried Rauner's going to lose. Thanks for the call, Mary Ellen. You got those too, Pat, you were saying. Yeah, I did. It's a comparison piece from NARAL basically saying that the only pro-life person on the ballot on either side is Jeanne Ives. Right. And I got it. And I'm a hardcore Republican, so you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to promote this idea of Jeanne being pro-life to pro-lifers across the state. So NARAL, National Abortion Rights League, that's the pro-abort group of the likes that the Rauners finance. Jeanne Ives is endorsed by the Susan B. Anthony list, which is a national pro-life organization. So there again is your contrast. I mean, that's why this election is so interesting, because we're going to find out on Tuesday the state of affairs in the Illinois Republican Party and the conservative movement. Are we primarily a conservative movement that is intent on being who we say we are? Or are we primarily a group of ignorant, amoral poltroons who will sell our souls for 30 pieces of silver, as I mentioned before, and care about the checkbook and care about what pundits of the left say about who can and can't win a general election in this state? Yeah, I think that the vast majority of the folks in this state and in our party, if they really truly know Jeanne and Bruce, they're going to go for Jeanne overwhelmingly. I think the only thing that cuts his way is that $20 million and the fraud he's perpetuated in these ads that might make someone who's not paying close attention to not really know. So they're not going to go in and vote nefariously. They're going to go in and vote because they've been fooled. Yeah, well, and then this would be the fool me twice, and so you know where the shame resides. On the other side, Pritzker, Kennedy, it seems it's down to those two. It feels like Pritzker has sort of stabilized like the Weeblo that he is. It's difficult to knock down. Very difficult. But there's a lot of people that are also saying, Chris Kennedy had a good debate performance in their final debate. And you even have, I think, some moderate Republicans that might be playing on the other side to vote for Chris Kennedy to stop J.B. Pritzker. So that's an interesting race, too. That has the potential, perhaps, for an upset. Yeah, I think it does. I think if the Democrats are smart, they nominate Kennedy. I think he's the best general election candidate. He's the one, when Jeanne wins, that I'd be the most concerned about facing. The other two have really negative circumstances against them. Dan Biss, I'm just glad he's starting to fade because he's just intolerable. And Pritzker's intolerable in his own right. So if they should nominate Kennedy. Will they? I think it's going to be Pritzker because of the money, because of he's bought out the party. He's bought out now African Americans because of what he said on the Blagojevich tapes. I think it's going to be him, but I think it's going to be him more narrow than people expected. Well, right. And that's $70 million in this primary so far. I mean, by comparison, Bruce Rauner spent $70 million to win a general election 4 years ago. So you understand how expensive this race is going to be. But this is the thing.
everybody, they're so intimidated by, and they fall prey to this idea, whoever has the biggest checkbook wins. And the political graveyard is littered with the tombstones of multi-millionaires or billionaires who thought they could just buy their way in. They're diminishing marginal returns to money. You have to have threshold level money, but you don't, but I mean, Pritzker can't get out of the 30s even after spending $70 million. And in a general election, the money comes, especially when the caps are off, which they obviously will be. The money comes. So if Ives is the nominee, the money will be there. The threshold level money will be there that she needs in order to be successful and win in November.